Two experts in ICF.
Yeah.
Decades of experience. One podcast.
Yeah.
Two hosts with a lot to say.
Look, I cannot sit through a struggle. I gotta get up and hustle. I gotta push through the pain, cause really that's how you build muscle.
Welcome to the Build With ICF podcast with your hosts, Trevor Brown and Heather Herring Brown. Yep, they're a package deal. With over 20 years of ICF installation experience, Trevor can throw down some expertise on sales, marketing, and training. On the other side of the table sits Heather, aka the girl boss, and she's earned the title as the owner of an award-winning ICF construction company, a drafting and design company specializing in ICF. And the numbers? With a master's in accounting, she does that too. Sleeves up, boots on. This is the Build With ICF podcast.
I don't want nothing for free. I'm here to work. Been through the dirt. I've been through the dirt, yeah.
Well, today, like the intro says, across the table, but I'm not sitting across the table. I'm sitting next to you today.
Same side of the table.
Same side of the table today. Uh-oh. Looks like we might have lost one of our guests. Hopefully he's reconnecting.
Okay.
But
He was fiddling with his camera.
yeah.
And then it just
And
went
then
away.
all of a sudden he went away. But yeah, so we're sitting on the same side because we have guests on the podcast today and really excited. So hopefully he can get logged back in.
Episode 44, by the way.
Episode 44.
Lucky 44.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't sure which episode it was. So thanks for looking that up. Okay. So it's been a bit since we've interviewed an ICF block company, right?
Yeah, we've
I
had a
guess
few
Element was
episodes,
the
but
last
it's
one.
been something that we've had multiple.
I'm so sorry.
And he's back.
I'm so sorry.
That's
My
right.
phone my app just crashed. It said
That's-
clear cache. Riverside just crashed.
So
I'm
remember,
so sorry.
so we kept it recording, so we're still going right
We're
now.
good,
And
yeah.
this is exactly what we talked about before we went on air and started recording, that we love the authenticity of these things on here. We didn't know you were actually going to bail off and then bail back on again to make it
We
more
were hoping
authentic.
that you're
I
coming
just
back.
like to keep things exciting.
People will remember this episode for that, make it memorable. So yeah, we just got done kind of telling them that we're this is episode 44. 4 is my lucky number, so it's gonna be a really good one. 44, double lucky. But it's been a while since we've had a manufacturer on.
Yeah,
And we've had a couple right in a row, really good manufacturers of new, exciting stuff. And we're kind of playing off of exactly what people have been asking us for. So this one in particular was a request that people had been asking us for, and kudos to Dustin, your marketing manager, for reaching out to us at the right time, Ben, and getting you on the show here, because this is something people were asking about. But we've got Ben Snuffer with Monolith ICF. They're a new polyurethane ICF, which is something that people, after my fire rant, a lot of people were throwing at us saying, hey, there's some more, fire resistant type products coming up. And boom, here you are. So welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you.
We
Yeah, apologies for having everything crash right at the beginning. So that's fun.
Hey, it just makes it fun. It makes it interesting.
I like it. Just makes you different. We haven't had anybody bail off and then bail back on right when we started hitting the record button. So you're very unique in that way. So
Well, I was very offended, and then I got over it and immediately came back.
I'm
And
glad
it came to heart.
you healed quickly. I like that. That's good. Hey man, well let's go into a little bit of, tell us about you. Like how did you get into the ICF world, and how long you've been doing it, and give us a little bit of your background.
So my background is I've always really been a blue collar worker. I really learn and enjoy using my hands. Both me and my wife are general contractors. We've built homes together, remodeled things together. We've done so many things in that regard. I've done that. Way back when I still do actually have a CDL, and all my endorsements.
Always good to have. Keep it.
Yeah,
Don't ever
I
get rid of
just-
it.
No, what I mean, I have so many endorsements. It's like
Yeah.
$300 to renew my license, but all the way from the most biggest machinery to a motorcycle endorsement. So, anyways, I hazmat. I worked in the oil field. I've done so many different blue collar things that it's just the way that my mind is wired. And so through my experience with building, and more importantly, it wasn't necessarily the new builds that put me on this path, it was the remodels. It was most specifically like the rental units where like you're getting the most abuse that a building can take. And what is a building, not a home, but I don't care if it's a fourplex, a duplex, or just a single family home, what is the abuse that a building goes through, and what is the resilience that a building can withstand? And here's some more distractions happening. Hold on. Yeah, sorry, I just had someone walk in, and I'm doing my podcast. So, anyways, that's my mother-in-law.
Tell her we said hi.
They say hi. So, anyways,
Love it.
so through the through that experience of going through remodels, through all these different things, it was always really impressive to me how non-resilient current building methods are, with simple things as dry rot, not dry rot, just what happens to windows, what happens to roofs, what happens to basically everything in the building process after you have, you know, it's really interesting. You get, what I observed is you have more abuse and decay in like a home built in the 90s than you do in like the 1920s, funnily enough, because we have a lot of really old buildings
Yeah.
in the avenues and Salt Lake area, and they're mainly like concrete and, you know, thicker. I mean, the walls are 12 inches thick, and those, they actually are resilient. So, anyways, just going through this process of really understanding the building methods and technologies, it really, I started asking the question, I think in 2015, what is actually legitimately the most resilient and the best building method? And that took me down a really big rabbit hole. I went through funnily enough, I started with the alternative building methods because I already understand stick built, you know, steel, a CMU, all these different things I really understand. And so what else is that out there was the question that I was asking, and how do I find the most resilient thing? And so I'm talking straw bale, cob. Cob is really, I mean, there's still cob homes alive in England right now,
Right.
in Europe, to earth ship, rammed earth. The tire is at earth ship. So I'm trying to say
Yeah.
earth
Yeah.
ship
Earthship.
with the
Yep.
tire and the rammed earth. And there's just so many different ones. I can't think of every single one off the top of my head, but there is a vast amount of alternative building methods. And I've gone to seminars. I've built cob homes personally. I've helped with straw bale. I've helped with timber, log, all these different things. And the thing that really kept me going was nothing satiated that thirst and that answer. I never got the answer. Like straw bale, amazing thickness. They're really good. They're pretty decent with R rating, and they're user friendly, and so is cob. But you need like 100 people to build like 1,000 square foot in any sort of sense of, you know, you got your cobbler's thumb, and you're making the clay in with your feet, and you're mixing it all, and you're making these little clay blocks, and you're putting it together, but then you have to let that layer dry, and it's just very labor intensive, and the R value is garbage, the U value is good. And so I'm going through this journey, and then finally, which is wild to me, and this is like a really big point I want to talk about today, is I've never heard the word ICF at that point. And through all of my Google researching, alternative building, different building methods, best resilient building, like I don't care how many times you can Google search something, ICF never came up.
Yeah.
Not once.
Yep.
And that was 2015. So Google was still, you know, a teenager. But that was really shocking to me. And so I finally found ICF, and I was like, oh my gosh, I found the golden ticket. Like, this is the thing. I researched the crap out of that thing. And since that day, I remember having a conversation with my wife like the next day, and I was like, I found it. Like I found the thing. My search is over.
The aha moment.
It was just, yeah, it was just the clarity. It was like lightning striking. And I was like, this is this is the cob is the concrete. The straw bale is your insulative block. All these technologies, they just all married together. And I was like, this is the thing. And so I remember looking at all the different companies, and then eventually I stumbled upon a dyeing company that I I think it took me 6 to 8 months. I can't remember specifically, but I found them on Facebook. It was a local to Utah, and I would Facebook message. I would get an automated message saying, "Thank you for messaging me. Email us and then call us."
Oh.
So I would Facebook, email, call, voicemail, text. I would do that step for about 8 months. And I would do it sometimes every day, sometimes, weekly, sometimes monthly, because you get busy building, and I'm not, I was like this weird online stalker just trying to find this company. And the reason that I was so just laser focused on this company is it was the only company that I could find that was doing the traditional ICF building method, but with polyurethane.
Yep.
And every other product, or company rather, was polystyrene. And so I ended up delving really deep into the closed cell rigid board polyurethane world. And I was like, okay, there are a couple things that I really like. Because if I'm going this far, I might as well find something that I personally feel is the best of the best. Never going to crap talk ICF, because I love this world and it is, to me, the best technology. It just tweaked a couple things that I really appreciated. So I did this for months, and then finally a gentleman named Kirk finally emailed back, and he said, we're not really doing this anymore, sort of limping along, do a thing here and there, but let me sell you an alternative. And I said, no, I don't want that. I want to have the conversation about the polyurethane. And basically within, I think, 2 or 3 conversations, he said, look, he has tried, I don't know if I want to say the companies, but he personally has presented this technology to major ICF players, and they weren't interested. And so Kirk is an older man. Sorry, Kirk, if you hear this.
Wow. Shots fired.
Oh man, it is so sensitive. He's going to give me so much crap for like weeks. He is a very youthful spirit. You're getting towards like closer to retirement.
Way to save it.
We'll just say that.
He's numerically advanced. Advanced.
There you go. Sorry, Kirk. So, anyways, I'm blushing right now if you guys can't see me, because you can't, but I'm sorry, Kirk. Anyways, he said, I've had an offer to sell this technology. People really aren't that interested here and there. I've offered this, and I felt like I was hoping that there was going to be one person that came along that loved ICF and polyurethane as much as I do. Would you like to go into business with me? And it was a resounding yes. Like, absolutely. That was literally 2 years ago. Tomorrow, we're going to celebrate our 2-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And every anniversary, I send him a picture of roses and steak. And I don't want to buy him that, but I'll send him a picture.
Yeah.
And so that is literally 2 years ago tomorrow. And since then, we have been on this journey. We found some amazing key players to go into partnership with. And we went and did a raise. We got investors. We got a bunch of people passionate with ICF and building, and all sorts of people from nationally, all over America, that are really interested in this, in ICF, in the specific to the polyurethane world. And that brings us to today. I mean, we've gone through troubleshooting. We've gone through years of technology building and all these things. And I'm sold, and I'll never not love ICF for the rest of my career in building.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, we can
That brings us to
relate.
today.
Yeah, we can relate to that. That's kind of our role too. And just, and I love that, like, off air, you guys had, we had a conversation, and that what I just loved about was that you just said, we're here to raise up the industry, the ICF industry. And I, I mean, to our regular listeners that listened a couple episodes ago, and I kind of went on my rant about fire, stuff, and I get so angry when people infight within our industry about, what ICF's better, what one's better, or this one's garbage and this one's not, and all the different things, when realistically it's us against the stick frame guys and the more inferior things. And I love that your story is the fact that you were driven by finding a better method. And I wish more builders in the world today were driven to find a better method instead of the, cheapest, most easiest thing that they've done forever kind of deal, and not trying to do something better for our industry. And when I say our industry, I'm going to say the building industry,
Yes.
that for home building, even bigger, that we have this option to fix it and do better. So that's awesome. And you've been great about, like, cause and I openly tell everybody, I don't have much experience with the polyurethane side of things. It's always been the EPS side of things for me for 4 years. That gets me so excited about having you on this podcast and getting to learn about it. I did my, research prior to the podcast to read up on you guys, and learned a lot just in reading that, and was very educational to me. So I want to kind of explain to people, because I'm sure people are trying to picture, like, what's different if they haven't seen, if they haven't gone to your website and seen how the block works. Explain, like, dimensions and size and everything. It's a same. Here's one thing I thought when I first heard about you, or when Dustin first reached out. I had seen I believe I had seen some polyurethane but they were all post and beam style. They weren't a true mono wall like what I prefer. I don't.
Yes, that's why I specified traditional ICF technology, because there's one right now in Arizona that there's a cute little polyurethane blocks, and it is post and beam.
Yeah, and I don't agree with post and beam. I don't think it's a way to go. There's a reason why it's kind of come and gone and failed over the years. It's not taken in big numbers like the other is. Because the fact of the matter is, if we just snap our fingers and all the foam goes away, whether it's EPS or polystyrene or polyurethane, if it just goes away, that wall can still structurally stand on its own. It's not being struck, it's a very secure structure that can still hold things out. You do that with one of these post and beam, or we like to call them waffle wall. You snap, and now you can put your arm right through the wall where the foam was, right? It's not my favorite method. I again, better than stick frame. So love you if you're doing that and you're doing it over stick frame. But I love the fact that your guys' block is a true traditional ICF, 6-inch core, 8-inch core, whatever, with the webs spacing 8-inch on center. But maybe give us a little spec and a visual for people that are just listening of what your block, looks like, what they would expect to see when they get to your website, or get there, or even better, get your product in their hand.
Just to confirm, I agree with you with everything you just said, and I'm very sorry for all the still post and beam ICFers out there, but it's like, to me, it's just like building with CMU.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not there for me.
Right.
But as far as our specs, we are a little bit different, only because we are the traditional 4-foot, but we're 12 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we're 12 inches instead of the 16 is 2 reasons. One, it's a preference thing. You talk to a lot of engineers and architects. A lot of them still like working traditionally, which is 1-foot increments.
Mm-hmm.
It does require you to do an extra course every 3 courses, because you have to make up for that lost inches. But more significantly, and most, like, the reason that nobody's doing polyurethane's a glue. Gorilla Glue is just really, really far into the resin glue side. But yeah, it's extremely difficult to work with. And so there's a reason that nobody does this yet.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question, was why isn't everybody doing that kind of deal? So that's awesome. That's a good question. It's harder.
Maddening.
Yeah.
It is. To put it this way, anybody can buy EPS bead, steam it, and create a block.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason we're 2 years into this and just about to open up shop. So a lot of people don't want to go through the blood, sweat, tears. So I've been working for basically free for 2 years. and not a lot of people are willing to do that. And it is glue, it is sticky, it is difficult material. So we compromised on a 12-inch block because we can actually get that to work. Maybe down the road, as technology and our engineers, we have an army of engineers on this. We've told them our hopes and dreams. I would like to have, down the road, maybe the I think Nadura has the 8-inch or the 8-foot block. I'd like to have all sorts of things. I don't think we'll ever have a brick ledger because it's not needed now. And it's just so hard to work with, guys. We're starting with a straight and a corner. That's all we're doing.
Keep it simple.
And
Keep it simple.
Keep it that.
Yeah, you can do a lot with a straight. If you're a framer, you can do still an arc wall. You can do arches. You can do 45s. I mean, if you can do a 45 with wood, you can do a 45 with a straight block. So we're not concerned about things like that. We're starting with a straight in the corner, and that's the specs. We're doing the traditional. We're starting with 8 and 6 because that is the most traditional for basements. If you're in an area with basements, everything below grade's 8-inch, everything above grade's 6-inch. And then for commercial, we will also be doing 10 and 12 for, hospitals, schools, those that require, sometimes church buildings want something bigger because or community centers, because in times of disaster, you want that 10 to 12 inches of concrete core.
Before we did too far ahead, just to ask you about the manufacturing side, because I know we've explained this to people on previous episodes, how they're made. Is it made, and this is me asking genuinely because I've never seen one made, where I've seen a million of them made, with the other way. Does it go into a mold similar to what they do with EPS? I mean, like you've got the metal mold, or is that how do you spray the foam into like a metal, mold that you're doing to make the block? How is it? How are you forming the blocks? Like, with the EPS, they drop the bead in.
What can you tell us that's not proprietary?
That's not proprietary. But
well, I mean, I could invite you to, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory situation, but then I have to have you sign NDAs.
Right.
But what I can tell you,
is it formed? I guess is it? I mean, because it doesn't. What causes?
Of course, there's a form.
But you guys aren't steaming anything.
It is a vastly different technology. It is, obviously you're going to have a mold because you have to have,
make the shape.
How do you make a block without a mold?
Yeah.
So we do have a mold. It's similar in that way.
But it doesn't expand or contract. Like, it's not like you're blowing it up with heat or anything to make it mold.
Well, it's actually vastly different technologies. So the easiest way to explain it is, have you ever seen a video of someone doing spray foam insulation?
Yeah, we spray foam all of our houses. So like, I totally see that.
That chemical violent reaction, it creates heat and it expands and it fills the cavity. And a lot of people will spray, and then they put like a lid or a board over it to keep and hold that form. Yeah. We're basically doing that in a metal form to control that chemical reaction, and we can adjust our densities, we have the beautiful thing about the polyurethane world out of the polystyrene world is we can control we have wild control parameters where we can adjust percentages, whether it's the A or B side, to create still within a 2.5-inch piece of foam, because that's what the industry standard is. Technically, we could get the same performance. We started at 1 inch. But we're like, well, this industry standard is 2.5 inches. And once we went to 2.5 inches, we're double the insulation rating per inch, just going from polystyrene to polyurethane. That's one tiny example. But with how wild the technologies are becoming with companies like NASA and SpaceX and Tesla, all these competitive companies that are using polyurethane specifically, they need a really light material that is the most insulative and performative per inch. Like a millimeter makes a difference in a space shuttle.
Right.
And they're not using EPS for a space shuttle. They're using polyurethane. And there's a reason. And so we're able to, within that 2.5 inches, we can dial it and say, I want it more rigid, or I want it more flame retardant, or I want a higher R value. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know how familiar many people are with like video games. So sorry if you're not, but traditionally, like in a a video game where you have a character and you want to like build specifications for that, like a warrior, you want like more strength, which would be like rigidity. You basically have like a dial system where if you want it more rigid, you increase the rigidity, but then you may sacrifice a little bit of R value, for an example. But with EPS, the only real way to like significant way to get more R value is to go from like a 2.5-inch block to like a 4-inch block, or to add, more. You just have to increase
graphite
the
or something
size.
to it. Yeah, you got to put something.
Yes, so you just have to add more. But with us, we can still play. There's an entire playground
in the same measurement
within the 2.5 inches.
That's awesome,
and it's a fascinating world.
Okay, so then Ben, like typical ICF blocks, I think like are an R22, and there's other ones that are R30. You have the plus blocks, but standard is 22. What is the R value on yours?
40.
Wow. So that just that jumps ahead of all codes.
What we're talking about. So this is another thing that I really want to. We talked previous to starting this podcast. One thing that I want to champion is to finally allow the ICF world to say their true R value, which is the performance R value.
Yes.
And it drives me insane.
Me too.
The fact, because right now, any competitor, any EPS should be able to say minimum R40. They should be able to say that.
We used to say R50 all day long because a blower door test is going to be at 52 to 55, period. We run blower door tests on everything. But the thing is R value gets taken away because a thermal mass, we lose the air infiltration, which means they can't R value it. So like it turns to K value. And it's like, it's such, I'm with you 100%. I mean, we used to have coffee mugs and t-shirts that said R50 plus walls. That was what anybody in the industry had them. And now it's like, you're a 22. Yeah. With no concrete in it. We can't build it with no concrete.
Yeah, and this is another thing with the alternative building. If you go down cob building methods, the only reason cob homes work is because they have an insane U value. And so the U value comes with your concrete core, the R value comes with your foam, and you're creating this beautiful relationship of marriage between two technologies that when they're combined, they excel to performances that we've never seen prior.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm interested in. I want to or rather educate and lobby the entire industry and raise the awareness to say, why can this technology, claim something when it's like barely that way, when we have to basically cut off our feet and our ankles almost up to our knees just to say, well, can we have a seat at the table because, well, maybe we're our blank. Please, sir, can I have some more? And it's like, no, like this is really pathetic. I'm tired of the industry having to downplay just to be on an equal playing field for the true enemies. We have 3 enemies that we could talk about later, but one of them is the lumber industry. And it is offensive what it is that they're able to get away with the technologies that to me, it should be, I mean, not that I'm all for free government and things, so I don't want to make it illegal because that would be crossing the bounds, but like, it's not. It should come with a warning. According to the state of California, stick-built homes will kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can put on everything else, but you can't. Yeah, put on that. I was just having this conversation yesterday. I think that what you're going to see is it is going to be driven by. It's not going to be a governmental thing. It's going to be driven by the insurance companies. I think the insurance companies are going to find. I think they're because these are real people with real dollars and CEOs and investors and boards and they are literally looking at their numbers going, we cannot keep paying people to build with firewood. We are spending money to give somebody. It's like giving your teenage kid the keys to a brand new car every time he goes out and wrecks it. I mean, how many times are you going to let your kid keep going out and wrecking it? And you're like, well, here's another brand new car. Go wreck it again. Knowing it's going to happen. Like it's going to get stopped, I think, by the insurance companies. They are going to basically come out and say, yeah, you can build a stick frame house. We're not going to insure it. And then what's going to happen is if you're not paying cash, your mortgage company is going to go, well, you need insurance to have, a construction loan, and then the mortgage company is going to deny your construction loan because the insurance company is not going to insure, if it's not a flammable product. So I think we're going to see a huge jump in our industry due to the fact that it's going to be driven by insurance companies not insuring. They're already doing it in tornado and hurricane areas. They're doing it in California to a certain, there's the fire zones and stuff like that.
Well, we even ran into that this year, redoing our insurance.
Yeah.
When we came
They
up for
tried to get
renewal,
us on our own
they tried
insurance.
to double our homeowner's insurance because we're in a fire zone. There's a fire hydrant at the end of our driveway. We're a concrete structure. Like all this stuff, we had to go to bat for ourselves. But it's happening, and it's not just happening in California or on the coast where they have hurricanes. It's happening all over the place.
Well, I think it's great for you guys. So let's explain a little bit. Let's get into the block a little bit, because that is something that is, explain to people why we're here. Why are we talking to you about a product that has been brought to my attention more about the less flammable, product, and how that differs against EPS. And like I said, I love this. We can give a little bit of behind the curtain here. You and I had this conversation before we got on the air, because of the fact that I do mention to people that, like, it's not, people envision this, idea that you put a flame to a block and it'll sit and burn for 5 hours. You can roast marshmallows over it. It doesn't burn that way. It melts and it goes away. And you and I agreed with that. And you're like, yeah, no, 100%. Believe that it's not, it doesn't light on fire, but it definitely will go away. Explain the difference between an EPS that will, admittedly under a flame, will melt, versus doing the same test to your block.
Sure. I would like to pre-frame this with, I have no enemies in the ICF industry, and
well,
I have
they know you're in
desire to
Utah.
create any.
They can come find you. They know you're in Utah.
Well, they do now.
Hey, you come and you know what? Come and visit me, and we can do a burn test together, and we can be chummy all the way.
It'll be fun.
So yeah, my expressed interest is to raise the industry, not to knock it down. So that being said, realistically, I agree that EPS does melt. No one can deny that. Just go and take a lighter to any EPS cutting that you have, and it'll melt.
Yep.
I think that and this is my opinion, that the current burn tests are currently favoring EPS only because they're talking about flame spread. And what flame spread means, well, there's two: flame spread and then like compromise of all materials, so failure rate. And so the flame spread, to me, is kind of disingenuous, because obviously EPS will never spread the flame because it instantly melts. It's instantly compromised, and it collapses on itself. It melts, but then it doesn't spread that flame,
right,
which I totally acknowledge and I agree with. What my question is what happens if you have, for the sake of example, you have a 4-foot block and you have a flame that starts in the bottom right corner. It'll go up, it'll melt, and then it stops. Well, what happens if you have a flame spread that's 4 feet? Well, that just means that your whole 4 foot is now compromised. And that's where flame spread versus the burn tunnel come into my argument, where in the burn tunnel, I can't remember how hot it is, so I do not want to misquote or misrepresent anything.
It's a giant incinerator. Yeah, it's an incinerator, basically, and people understand that.
Yes, picture a wall of flame, and you have, in this burn tunnel, you have a built wall of whatever material. It could be wood, it could be EPS, ICF, it could be anything.
Yeah.
In this example, you have polystyrene wall that goes towards this burn tunnel. And what they're looking for is, when does that material fully get compromised? And where I feel like the industry is disingenuous, and forgive me, anyone that's listening, if you do that in a realistic way where the material itself fails, I feel like you wouldn't cover it in sheetrock. But in the burn test right now for EPS, they do put that sheetrock on. So technically, in my opinion, as you move that wall towards the incinerator, you're not technically testing EPS, you're testing sheetrock plus EPS, which just doesn't make sense to me. And so that's my only argument. And from my understanding, anybody can yell at me in the comments.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with it. It fails at 26 feet, including the sheetrock. With ours, with no sheetrock, it fails within 6 feet.
Right.
So that's a 20-foot difference. And that's being raw to the incinerator. And I think that speaks for itself. I'm not saying that you shouldn't build with traditional ICF. I think ICF every single time will be better than any technology in existence today. We're just a step. We're just a little bit higher. We're a little bit better in that flame test. Like that speaks for itself. If it fails at 26 versus 6, there's the proof.
Mm-hmm.
If it's double the R rating per inch, there's the proof. I'm not saying not to use polystyrene, although I am, because I'm trying to sell my product.
There's nothing wrong with selling your product.
Yeah, it's just if you want double the R rating and you want a product that, let's say your siding magically blows off and there is a wildfire, it does not compromise under those conditions, and it's provable because we've actually done I would love to see what the EPS stands in that burn tunnel without the sheetrock. What happens then? What is the actual? Just be honest. What does the material fail at?
Right.
And that's the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. I think that gives people, over the podcast can have a visual of that, kind of picturing, it rolling towards this incinerator and at what, how close could it get before it just poof, kind of gets incinerated. Right. So I think that's a great way to put it. And that's exactly what I needed to hear to kind of understand it too myself. So I love that. That's a perfect way to explain it.
Real quick, to put it this way, that being said, and you don't have to answer this, if you had a wall that had no concrete and no sheetrock in front of it, which wall would you stand at 10 feet away from the incinerator?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I love the analogy.
Because that's what happens in a wildfire. Like,
right.
If you can't evacuate, and we can get into this too, if you can't evacuate and you're in a wildfire, at the end of the day, we're just a little bit more, maybe 1% to 3% more in cost. But what would you actually, like, your child, you're not home, you're at work and you have 3 children in the house. Does that 1% to 3% matter? Does the ego matter so much where it's like, well, I care about polystyrene versus polyurethane. And if a different foam came out that was better than polyurethane, I would readily admit it. Right. And that's fine. It's my goal is what is legitimately the best to me.
Yep.
Well, what is legitimately the best?
No, I love it. I think that makes 100%.
Me to the polyurethane.
Yeah, and that's 100%. That's the right answer, and that's like just from the beginning, from the outset of you explaining. Your background is you've always been in a quest to find the best, and this is what it's led you to it, and it's admirable, and I love listening to all the new information I'm learning about this stuff. So that's great.
Well, I wanted to ask because we didn't talk about this yet, but Ben, where are you guys located at? Where are you manufacturing, or where will you be manufacturing?
South Salt Lake, Utah.
Okay. And are you manufacturing currently?
Yes. Well, we will be full production. What is it? January, February, March, April.
Okay.
Cool.
So we're doing right now, we're having smaller projects we've gone through a lot of re-engineering because this technology did exist prior to me finding it, but there was a lot of questionable engineering choices. For example, it wasn't reversible. This one is.
Okay.
So the spreaders, you could only orient it once, which is insane to me. So like you had to order the correct amount of lefts and rights because it wasn't reversible. Little things like that, and like the ruler system where it's like every inch there's a score mark so you can easily measure. Just a lot of quality of life changes. And then our foam formulation has completely changed for the better, only because we were going through so many different iterations. We just talked to our polyurethane guys and we're like, since we're not manufacturing right now, what can we do differently? And so we've gone through this wild experience of just to give you an example, this doesn't exist in our block, but we discovered a polyurethane that is R100 per inch.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I'm not saying we're using it. It doesn't even exist. It would make it would make no sense because the rigidity is completely compromised at that point. But in the poly world, like I've been going through this journey, and it's like, what are the possibilities? Let's say there's 50 companies passionate about polyurethane ICF. What would it push us to become? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's where we're manufacturing. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
And I just keep going off on these little fingers.
No, that's good.
But
Well, we'll rein you back in. I've got a couple questions that I want to just some quick hitters here that I know are going to get asked because I think of everything as from a installer standpoint, and a lot of our listeners are installer guys that are like, we love the big brains and the engineering and the sales guys and all the guys that will, come up with these really cool ideas, but really there's going to be some boots on the ground that are going to have to stack this and install it and do all the work on it, right? So I know a lot of the guys are going to ask, one of the things that I know just from the work I've done with just flat sheet product of polyurethane is, and with EPS is like, how are they doing electrical in this? Like where we're, with an EPS, you slice it, you can actually stuff your Romex in and it will kind of expand back over it. I know you guys don't really re-expand after you cut in it. Or guys, are they putting their electrical in with conduit, or are they gluing it in, or what have you seen as far as how are they going to want to install electrical into the wall?
it's the exact same way, with the exception that a hot knife won't work because our material doesn't melt.
Good sales pitch too, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good sales pitch. Yeah, it doesn't melt. So.
Electric chainsaw it is.
The chainsaw?
Yes, it is precisely. Yeah, just create that little jig at the end of your little electric chainsaw. Exact same way. Just route it out, cut your thing out, pry it out, shove your Romex in. If it's coming, you have to use your conduit no matter what. If it's plumbing, you can still anchor to the concrete. And what a lot of people do, even with EPS, is what it is that you'll use with ours, which is, funnily enough, you just use great stuff, which happens to be polyurethane anyways.
Yeah. Same thing. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then I noticed on your literature, you talked about a difference in, because of the compressive strength, flexibility, the strength of the actual block itself, that it could require less bracing. And it didn't explain that.
So we will always say to do what's industry standard, which is typically
6 foot on center.
Yeah, 6 foot on center. That being said, we've never had a blowout, and we did a 16-foot, it was braced, 16-foot single lift, and didn't have a blowout.
Wow.
I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying that.
No. I've had a few of those myself where we've had 8 foot lifts, and it was not on purpose, but it was kind of cool afterwards to say, wow, we actually, it was just a rookie guy on the pump, but we actually were kind of cool to see it and saw that it didn't blow up, but don't want to do it again. But
so speaking of,
so just so you know, in my personal house, I'm going to do an 8 or 9 foot wall, and then I'm just going to pour it all in one because I know the material can handle it. I'm not saying that you just do industry standards because industry standards are there for a reason.
Right.
But you just also have, some people like the vibrators that you put on the cap where it vibrates the entire rebar stick.
Yeah, that's what we
use. Love those.
Yep.
Some people like to use the wand, and you would still, it would make sense to use both normally what you would do is you'd pour down to the side of a window, and then it seeps down into the window, and then you got your wand, and you're going to vibrate, angularly
That's what we do,
from your window, and you're going to vibrate it till it gets to the top of your window. But one thing that, and I'm sorry if everybody disagrees, but that wand, it can get stuck, and it can hit rebar, and it can vibrate, and it can bounce, and you got aggregate, and all these things. And the biggest thing is if you got a rookie down there and he's beating the crap out of this wall of EPS, you can get a blowout just from user error.
It's usually what happens.
The rigidity of our block just doesn't do that. And as far as specs too, we're not every 6 inches on center, we're every 8 inches on center. Okay. And I feel like a big reason that a lot of companies will do every 8 and 6 inches on center is to just create more rigidity, which we don't have to do.
100%.
And secondly, it lowers our costs because you don't have as much plastics in there.
Well, it lines up with 16 on center stud walls too, because so many siding companies, spec out different things.
Yeah, 6 has to do definitely with the blowout test, right? Like you look at industry standard is around 500 PSI is what everyone's shooting for when they do that. AMVIC, admittedly is by far the highest. They had the cavity test at 865 psi, which is the highest in the industry of test. That begs me to ask: have you guys done a cavity test on these? I mean, do you guys have a pound? What your psi would be to break one of these blocks?
We have not, and the only reason is because we have not. I believe in 2 weeks we will have our finalized final formulation.
Okay, cool.
And the second we do, we already have all the companies lined up to do every single one of those tests. They don't take very long. We just don't want to. I'm not going to give you any claims from the old material.
Yeah.
I only want to
agree.
give
I think you should.
the real live one. That's why, again, in 2 weeks we'll have it done, but we're not going to open up for shop to the public till April, because we want to go through those things and really have our data sheets 100% with verifiable, backed up information. And funnily enough, the last home building, I just did home build. Again, I'm not anti EPS. I just built a home this last summer out of Amvic, funnily enough.
That's right.
And I love Amvic. I think they're great. They have a place in Utah. And sorry, Amvic lovers, but the owner was an engineer and a building engineer. He lives in San Francisco and he does all the big buildings. And he's like, I really want to try this new material to make the concrete stronger, which created a much, much higher slump. And so none of us were used to such a high slump. Like normally it's like a 6 to 7, and it like created like I don't even know what it was. But because of that, and because of introducing a new material, there was 5 blowouts on that job. And then after like the 5th blowout, we're like, okay, owner, engineer, we're done playing with your new concoction. Went back to what was original, and then the blowout stopped. Yeah. So, but sometimes it was his house and he didn't care. I mean, it was his. It's dumping, and he has to pay for all of that.
Flowing out the bottom.
Yeah. Whatever. He just moved to another section of the house, but it was that was an interesting project. But my point is I'm not anti EPS. I still use it. I just used it. You know.
No, and I'm anxious to see what you guys come up with the test. I think that'd be really, really cool and a great selling point for you, because I mean, a good example, I'm just sitting here thinking about listener questions that we've had come in. We actually just talked about this on our last episode today? No, today's World Concrete, but we did listener questions, but flat walls, people worried about the sheetrock being flat. Well, I bet your wall is probably going to be the flattest of the wall. I mean, with it as rigid as you wouldn't worry about any kind of movement in that wall. It'd keep it more rigid and flat and stuff for more of that flat finish sheetrock that people like.
That is absolutely correct. And I'm never going to name names, but I personally and others that I know that have built with EPS, there is one specific company that is notorious for bowing.
Yeah.
And one thing that I know that some contractors that I've talked to, because I've got an army of contractors that are just waiting for us to open because they want to use our block. They will deliberately bow because they know that it's going to shift, and they know which direction it's going to shift with the way that they pour. Mm-hmm. So like it's sort of
they're playing the game of that hedging it. Yeah.
And another thing is we don't have a compaction. So a lot of the bracing, how there's that slot where you can put your screw in, and you tend to put it what it would be at the bottom, so that way when it sort of settles a bit, then it adjusts. Our spanners or spreaders or webs, everybody has a different term. They are tip to tip, and they make connection the whole way because our foam doesn't collapse and there is no settling. And so you have a true connection on your stud from the very top of your rafter all the way to your basement. It is a plastic connection because there is no settling with our foam.
That's awesome.
It's just that rigid.
It's cool. Well, we're blowing it up. We're at 51 minutes.
I know. And we've kind of gone through without even asking, the same 3 questions we ask everybody. We've kind of rolled through some of those without asking them, but, talking about, and I don't know, because you're not in full production yet, but, being involved in this company for the last 2 years and building and changing and going through all these formulas, a memorable experience in this whole process for you that you can share with the listeners?
I'm sorry. So what is your question? Just what that experience was like?
Well,
Look, just give us one if I just ask you, what's a memorable experience that you've had coming up with Monolith? What would you say your most memorable experience so far has been?
Well, the most memorable is actually the biggest reason I wanted to come on this podcast. So if you don't mind, I'd love to, talk for maybe 5 minutes just about.
There you go.
Please,
Perfect.
go for it.
I got digital. I can go. There's no tape here, so we can, we're going until it runs out.
So my biggest, I'm telling you, it was wild. It was what it is that we all just went through, which is the world of concrete. And I went through the world of concrete, and I went and had a conversation with every single booth. Some I said who I was, some I'm just a builder, some I'm just an idiot talking to them just to see how people are communicating with the market. And right now, according to our internal calculations, the ICF industry is about $1.3 to $1.5 billion annually. According to our calculations, it should be a $15 billion annual minimum with the technology and what it should be doing. And this is, I'm speaking specifically to the industry right now. I will speak very honestly and very firmly because I'm convinced of it. And if I'm stepping on toes, that's okay. I am vastly disappointed with the way that the ICF industry holds themselves and their messaging. And there is a massive gap. You go to the world of concrete and you go from, what was it? I think everybody was in the South building.
North Hall. Yeah, North Hall was where all the guys were. Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to the North, I think the only one in the South Hall was Fox Block. You go to the South side, you're talking to people, they don't even know what ICF. I went to dozens and dozens and dozens of outside of the ICF world. Do you know what ICF is? And they're like, what? I'm like, Insulated Concrete Forms. And they're like, what? I'm like, okay, this is the problem. So that's actually the question I asked every single booth. Why does nobody know what ICF is? What is your messaging? Where's the failure points? Who are the enemies? And our enemies are the lumber industry, the current, the word just escaped, unions, the current unions that are fighting for lumber and specifically masonry unions that are still stuck on CMU. These are massive, massive behemoths. We're talking, I just said that the ICF industry should be $15 billion. The lumber industry is $288 billion, according to the forestservice.org that I just looked up yesterday. It is $288 billion. And you're telling me that we can lobby with $1.3 billion?
Right.
We're tiny. We're the way that I look at it, we're all interfighting for dinner scraps, and it's offensive to me. We should be at the feast. We should be the founder of the feast. We should be the top dogs, but instead, we have only one association. It's the ICFMA. It is the ICF Manufacturers Association, and to me, that's a problem. We need an ICF association that includes contractors, architects, engineers, boots on the ground guys. We got to get rebar guys, ready mix guys in there. It's not just about the manufacturers associations. I am a manufacturer, and I'm telling you guys, we're doing it wrong.
Right.
We have to change, and if we do not change, basically, this is, and I'm telling you, I'm specifically talking to every player at the World of Concrete, and the feedback that I got and the sense that I got was the ICFMA was basically like a truce. And it's a truce between all the manufacturers, and they're going to be like, okay, let's all pitch in, and we're going to have this association, and we're not going to shit talk each other anymore. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
We're not going to crap talk each other anymore. And that stops mostly the inner fighting, but there is no head of the association. Like the association is they take turns. I don't know if you guys know this, but each manufacturer, tomorrow it could be Nudura. And then they have their turn at running the association. And then it goes to Fox Block. And then it goes to Build Block. And then it goes to Strong Block. And then it goes to, I can't remember. I don't need to list them all.
Yeah.
You get the point.
Yep.
So there is no head associate. There is no neutral association where they have the best industry at heart. And it is from the outside in, I'm coming in with fresh eyes. And I'm telling you guys, this is the wrong way to do it. And I know it. And we're going to be heading something new. I hope that it gains traction. I hope that people agree. And I hope that we can, it's like in Braveheart, where William Wallace and Robert De Bruce are saying, unite the clans. Like we legitimately need to unite as a industry. And we have enemies. Like I said, it's the lumber industry, it's the unions. And finally, one that was just jaw-dropping to me is the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund. And this is something, that's the first that Monolith is taking on themselves. We will, I don't care if anybody joins us, we have investors, we have people, we have connections, and we will change this industry. Mm. You can join us if you'd like, which I really hope you do, but enough is enough. And it is disgusting to me. I heard feedback in the world of concrete from manufacturers that said, we have tried to lobby. We've tried to lobby in Washington, D.C., and they got shut down by the lumber industry. Mm-hmm. And then they go and try and lobby to get it easier. The process for anybody to get a stick-built home is laughably easy. In order to get an ICF home, just the permitting, loan process, insurance, all these things, there are so many loopholes that are ludicrous to me. And so we changed this process, and the lobbying specifically to the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund is there was a county, their feedback was, we don't want to build with ICF. This was specific to Florida. We don't want to build with ICF because we get more billions of dollars in disaster relief fund, letting buildings die and doing the rebuild is more, it's better for our coffers to do that method than to have permanent building. And to me, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And so the Monolith will head, we are doing it, whether anybody joins us or not, we will change that FEMA procedure. I may have an audience with the director of FEMA here in the short coming months. I am dead serious on changing this industry. This is my passion, and nothing is going to stop me. I promise you that. Talk to me in 2 years. I will have changed the way that things are dealt with and done, because it's not what you know, it's who you know, and we will get it done. I promise you. Talk to me in a year, and we're going to have stuff done.
Well, that's exciting.
That is my biggest message today.
Well, I think I wanted to ask a few more questions, but I think it's probably the best way to close out. What a great that is awesome. I mean, that's the passion that we need in this industry. And I will tell you this, and you and I could probably offline get into a whole nother hour-long conversation in exactly what you're talking about here. The ICFMA, we've obviously had several members and board members and stuff on this podcast. We have never really had them on specifically. I will tell you that there was been, I had conversation from multiple members at World of Concrete. I do, rest assured, I believe that there's some wheels in motion to try to help these things. And I hope that you're able to get involved with that and do that, because there is a lot of grumblings about wanting an ICF association, not an ICFMA, just an ICFA, right? And, and I've been contacted by several people, several listeners of this podcast have reached out to me about how we do that. And I do believe we need people like you that are going to get extremely passionate about it and make the changes happen. Heather and I are both on committees and actively sit on boards at the National Association of Home Builders. That's 180,000 members, that we have already in our pocket that we could be getting our word out to without having to start from 0 members. And it's been something that we've seen. I mean, I've been involved with the association for 20 years. I've never been approached like I have in the last 2 years, even just with the National Association of Home Builders saying, hey, we need resilient homes. Can you come and speak at this thing? Can you come and sit on this panel? Can you, like, we're going to the International Builders Show next week, and we are sitting in multiple meetings and multiple panels to talk about exactly what you're talking about. We're done building things that keep getting torn down. So I will say that I believe there are some wheels in motion. You're the motor though. Like, I mean, we need that passion and that motor. And I hope that everybody, and I mean, myself included now, after getting to meet you, and hopefully I can help you with some things and we will get involved with this, but would love to see how this continues and plays out, because I agree with you 100% that we have to make a change, and we have the answers. I say that it's like, curing cancer or something, where if people say, well, yeah, we can't cure cancer. We don't have a cure for cancer. You're right. We don't have a cure for cancer. That's a horrible thing. We have a cure for houses burning down. We have a cure for houses getting blown over in hurricanes. We have a cure for houses getting lost to tornadoes. We're just not using it. So it's like having a cure to cancer and then saying, yeah, we're just not going to use that. We know there's a cure to cancer. We're just not going to use it. We're going to keep not using it. And that's how I look at what they do in California and some of these states where they just get decimated every year. And they go, well, what can we do? Well, if you built with ICF, you would not have these problems. So, particularly with your product, even better, with Monolith. So need to get this thing wrapped up. I love the passion and love what you said there. That was a perfect ending to this podcast. What is your best ways of contact? How would you like all of our listeners to reach out with you and get more information and get on this list to start lining up those purchase orders for you in April?
So they can go to buildmonolith.com. My email is just ben@buildmonolith.com. I don't mind if people just want to call me and have a conversation. If people want, is it normal to give out phone numbers? I don't have to. That's weird.
I'll get it. I can put it on the show notes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't mind if anybody that wants to. I plan on being the spear tip. I don't care. I'll take all the blows from the lumber industry. I'm very resilient. Nothing's going to stop me. So if you guys want to support or hide behind me, I don't need money. I need support. I need numbers. I need people that if it's just me, I'm not very intimidating. I can yell and I can be very loud and I can be very obnoxious, but I need numbers.
We need to get loud together.
Yeah.
Yes. But here's another thing. All the ICF industry is on one peak shouting from the rooftops on one roof. We need 300 roofs. We need 300 messages. We need all these things. And that's actually one last thing that I wanted to say. Our slogan, everybody is build better, build strong, build Fox Block, build better, build strong, build Madura, build better, build strong, build Monolith. No, this is our message to the world. Protect what you love, build Monolith, because that's what really matters. It's protecting what you legitimately love. It's your memories. It's your family. It's your trinkets. I mean, it's material, but I mean, you have something that your grandma knitted you, or heirlooms that are passed down, and that's burnt down. That is irreplaceable. Protect what you love and build with Monolith. That's our slogan.
I love that. The thing is, and kind of as we start closing this out, we need passionate people in this industry. That's part of one of the reasons. I mean, that's kind of the main reason why we started this podcast, is we were very passionate about it. We wanted our voice to be heard. We wanted, the block manufacturers, the customers, the distributors, the installers, everybody that's using the product. We're trying to get the name, get it out there and make it, something that when you do walk into those other booths at World of Concrete or Builder Show and you ask them about ICF, they aren't looking at you like a deer in the headlights. They understand what it is. We're trying to get that education out there. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and spending, we're just a little over an hour in recording, but we spent about an hour on the phone prior to it as well. So just been great to meet you and to learn more about your company. And like Trevor said, we will put your information in all the show notes, and we'll link this as well, so you guys will be able to share it out on your socials. And then for all of our listeners, if you have any questions,
you can reach out to us on our socials at Build With ICF on all socials. We love the DMs. We can reach out to us through messaging through any of the platforms for podcasting. We're on there. I'm keeping them better on those, on our messages on those. And then obviously email works great. info@buildwithicf.com. We will be roaming around the Builder Show. Well, I guess that's going to be, well, no, this will actually launch while we're at the Builder Show. So you may see us while we're at the Builder Show. You may see us while you're listening to this in your headset, while your earbuds, when you're walking around. So yeah, we're going to have a follow-up to the IBS show, which will be great. We'll kind of go around and see what we see with the ICF world and how that was played out at IBS.
If you do see us at IBS and you ask us about a t-shirt, we may have some of those with us as well.
And I will have a Sharpie to sign things. And I can sign people. I can sign babies.
Oh,
I can sign all that stuff.
Thanks,
whatever,
Ben, for putting that thought in his head.
I can.
No problem.
Now it's my goal now to autograph something or somebody. So yeah, no, we'll be roaming around. Please give us a shout. We'll try to. I didn't do a very good job, World of Concrete, but we'll try to put it up on Instagram, kind of what we're doing and where we're at, because we are going to be in a few booths. We are going to be speaking in a couple events. So we'll try to put that on. And then, a couple big episodes coming up. We got some great guests, just like Ben here, that are coming on here in the next few episodes. So we're going to have some really cool stuff going on. So again, thank you, Ben, so much. Monolith ICF, Polyurethane ICF. I try to throw that in there because it is different. Go check it out. Like, I mean, guys, just for me, especially just being an ICF nerd, it was just a good bunch of information on your website. You guys done a good job on your website. It's got a lot of good information on there, and go check it out. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, reach out to either us and Ben and find out what we can help you out with to get more information about it. So other than that, I think we'll get on out of here.
Till next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.